Hello, and welcome to Silicon Steve, where we discuss all things tech, gaming, and media. I'm your host, Silicon Steve. Let's get into today's video. Alright, in today's video, we're going to be testing Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. It was just released last week for PC, PlayStation, Xbox. So we're going to be using our RTX 3060 Ti with a Ryzen 5 5600X to go through the different graphics options and see what's best. We'll eventually get to our optimized settings based off of my experience, but we'll start off now going to 1920 by 1080, so 1080p, and at the lowest settings. So if we go through the settings, I have it on full screen, so you can't actually set the FPS limit to unlimited. It only gives you three options: 120, 60, and 30. Your FPS limit for events, it's 30 or 60, and these are your videos, your little story events before the game actually plays. We're not going to adjust brightness. HDR is turned off because, let's face it, Windows HDR just isn't there yet. And presets. So we have light, custom, best quality, high quality, standard. So light would be the lowest. This is its internal resolution scaling. I have frame generation turned off. Nvidia Reflex Low Latency on, ray tracing off, and then these are the settings for all the graphic settings on low. So you'll see everything is light, 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 light. Filtering is ×2. And all of these post effects are turned off. Let's test her out. So we can drop down to the 70s. I mean, we were up in the 80s. Down to the 60s. And this is at 1080p at the lowest preset. Okay, let's try some other settings. Okay, so we're going to leave it at 1920 by 1080. We're just going to change the preset to standard, which is that's its medium. And you'll see all this stuff is now standard. Your filtering is ×4 now. Standard, and all these post effects are now turned on except for monochrome filter, which, I mean, that's black and white, so we don't need that. So let's go ahead and test this out. Immediately we're below 60. And again, this is on standard quality. And there's some instances where we're getting above 60, but it's consistently inconsistent where we're dropping below 60, above 60. So this is straight up 1920 by 1080, and no upscalers. And we're not maintaining 60 FPS. So let's change the setting and see what else we get. Okay, still at 1920 by 1080. No upscalers. And let's turn it to the next option. So preset was standard, now we're going to high quality. And you'll see all these options has adjusted itself to high quality. Anisotropic filtering is ×8 now. All these effects are still on except for monochrome. So let's see what we get. Not much different than when we were in standard. We're still getting into the mid to high 50s most of the time. Man, this game is really hard. So yeah, it's not much different than the standard. My deal is this game is a good looking game. I mean, they're using Unreal Engine 5 now, but I don't think it's good enough to get this type of performance out of it though. Stop throwing ninja stars at me. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a decent looking game, but it's to be consistently in the 50s. It should look better than this. I think. This is my opinion. What do you guys tell me what you think? Okay, let's try the highest preset and see what we get. Okay, still at 1920 by 1080. And now we're going to best quality, which is the highest preset that's available. So still no ray tracing, no upscaler. All of the presets are set to best quality. Anisotropic filtering is now 16. So foliage, so basically all your plants and green life in the background, doesn't have a best quality. It's light, high quality, or standard. So this is, what the setting will be on best quality. And then post effects are all on. And let's go ahead and see what we get. Ooh, nearly in the 40s at best quality. The game does look better. It just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't justify the hit to performance to me. I've played better looking games at higher performance than this. I mean, we can get into the 50s. If we look over here where there's not a lot of graphics going on, we can get into high 60s, but as soon as you have all these effects going on here, you'll see the frame rate drops into the 40s and 50s. And again, this is native 1080p. So let's try turning on DLSS and see what we get. So we're going to do DLSS quality and see what type of FPS that nets us. So still not in the 60s. Image actually looks a bit better. But we're getting into the low 60s, dipping into the 50s periodically. I mean, it's still playable, but I would have liked to have seen this type of performance, actually better performance, without DLSS enabled. So let's try different DLSS settings with the Ultra preset and see what we get. So we already had DLSS quality enabled on the best quality preset. So let's go ahead and try balanced and see what kind of FPS we get. So on balanced, now we're getting into performance I'd like to see in the high 60s and low 70s, which means that should translate to a consistent 60 FPS experience. Alright, let's set the quality to the lowest preset and DLSS to the max preset and see what type of FPS we can net doing that. So light, DLSS, ultra performance. Now that's all enabled at 1080p. Let's see what we get. Yeah, it's horrible looking, but the FPS is consistently in the hundreds, so that's good. And it's a smoother experience, but yeah, you sacrifice lots of image quality for this type of performance. Unless you're an FPS enthusiast, I wouldn't recommend it. It's really ugly. You have some of the processing effects that you get from enabling the DLSS ultra performance. You'll see the pixelation around the character. You'll see pixelation on all the objects in the background. I mean, even in the foreground. Look at the petals floating. They're all super highly pixelated. So yeah, you can't even tell. You can't even see the detail on the katana that Ryu Hayabusa has on his back. So I wouldn't recommend playing like this. But with that said, now let's go ahead and see what we can get out of 1440p. Okay, so now we're at 1440p. All the same screen settings except no upscaling of any kind. So this is native 1440p, and we're starting off with the light preset that has all of these graphics options set to the lowest possibility, and none of these post effects. Let's see what we get. So immediately we're not even in the 60s at the lowest preset at 1440p. We're at the high 50s, which, I mean, it's playable. Some dips to the low 50s. But just by looking at it like this with the lowest preset, we're going to need to use DLSS for the higher presets, even for the lowest preset at 1440p. It's just not a consistent 60. With this kind of fast-paced game, you want minimum of 60 FPS. Alright, let's change some of the settings and see what we get. So I'm going to go ahead and step it up to the standard preset. We're going to turn DLSS on, and we're going to do so at quality, no ray tracing, and let's see what we get out of it. So with DLSS quality, 1440p, we get dips into the high 50s. It looked like we were going to hold a decent 60 FPS experience there for a second. But inconsistently we're getting, 60 FPS, high 50s. So let's bump up the graphics quality, but also the DLSS, and see what else we get. Okay, so now still 2560 by 1440, so 1440p. Preset is now set to the high quality, and I'm going to leave it on DLSS quality for now to see what kind of performance we get with the high quality preset. As we get to the maximum preset, which is best quality, I'll bump DLSS up to see if we can maintain a solid 60 FPS. For now, let's see what we get at high quality with DLSS quality. That was very weird. There was like some lag at the beginning, and then it finally picked back up, and we're in the 60s looking out in the distance. But if we turn around where all the detail is with the geometry and the buildings and on the floorboards here, we're still in the low to high 50s, so definitely not a 60 FPS experience. Brutal. Okay, let's go ahead and move the preset up to best quality. And we'll leave DLSS at quality and see what we get out of it. So yeah, immediately there's some stutter. And you saw that we got down to the 40s. Yeah, we're not gonna get close to 60 FPS. And I mean, this is not a terrible thing. It's at, 40, 50. It's still playable, but it's not my preference. I would prefer a solid 60 FPS experience with a little bit of less graphics to reach it, honestly. Okay, let's start changing the DLSS presets and see what we get. Okay, we're still at 1440p. Best quality, and now we're going to adjust DLSS to see the performance we can get out of it. So we were at quality, we're going to try balance now and see what we get. So as soon as the game starts, light stutter and it's a bit laggy, but still not in the 60 FPS range at DLSS performance. Okay, let's change DLSS from balanced to performance and see what we get. So still high 50s. We were in the 60s for a quick second there, but honestly still not the performance we're looking for. So let's try ultra performance, which is the lowest or highest DLSS preset you can select, and let's see if we get 60 FPS. Okay. Yeah, in performance, we're getting 60 FPS. Ultra performance, sorry. And this is at the best quality preset, at 1440p. Yeah, it's consistently in the 60s, so ultra performance at 1440p, that will get you in the 60s, but you can tell that it's in ultra performance. You can tell that it's upscaling a much smaller resolution. The quality of the picture has diminished extensively, but I mean, it's still a playable experience, and when you're moving fast, it's hard to tell. It's when you start standing still to pay attention to the graphics in the foreground and background, is that when you notice that you're in ultra performance with the blurriness and the jaggies. But at least it doesn't have those post-processing artifacts that you normally see from DLSS performance, at least not as much as you would expect. So it actually does a pretty good job at smoothing out the picture, but again, it's not at the clearest quality. So alright, from this point, we're going to start testing some ray tracing. Okay, so with our first ray tracing test, we're going to start off with 1920 by 1080, so 1080p. With ray tracing, we know we have to have DLSS on. We're going to start with quality at the light preset, and this game you can't adjust the ray tracing settings. It's either on or off. That's all that is available. So with ray tracing on and graphics preset set to light, let's see what we get. So at the lowest preset, 1080p, DLSS quality, we're getting 100 FPS. That's something doesn't seem right, because that doesn't even look like DLSS quality. That looks like DLSS ultra performance. So let's check our settings. So it seems like there's some type of bug with ray tracing, because it definitely looks like ultra performance resolution. It doesn't look like DLSS quality, even though DLSS quality is selected. So let's restart the game and see if that fixes our problem. Yeah, even after restarting the game, there seems to be a bug that forces a lower DLSS preset than quality, because this definitely looks like ultra performance with all the post-processing effects here, all the stuff that you would see with DLSS ultra performance. Is you see all the pixelation around the character models. And the effects, they're all pixelated, like almost like FSR2 or FSR1 would look, and not DLSS quality. So let's turn off DLSS and see what that does. Okay, DLSS is off, ray tracing is still on, and let's see. Yeah, so it's a byproduct of the ray tracing being enabled. It's doing it on its own. It's like it's automatically selecting a super resolution preset for you when ray tracing is enabled and you don't have the graphics card to get the performance out of it. I don't know. Maybe somebody with the 5090 or something can say otherwise, but it's automatically putting on this resolution scaling with ray tracing enabled. Let's try it at 1440p and see what we get. Okay, so now we're at 1440p. Still on the light preset with ray tracing enabled. Let's see what happens. It seems like that post-processing bug, you know, that resolution scaling bug has gone away. Maybe it is because of the resolution we're at. I'm not entirely sure, but we have ray tracing on with light preset. Oh, nope. There's the post-processing effects that I was seeing earlier. It's just harder to tell with the better resolution. Let's go ahead and check our settings here. Still light preset. Yeah, no DLSS, and it looks like FSR is automatically on with ray tracing. Let's try a higher preset. Let's go ahead and go all the way up to the best quality preset and see what we get. Oh, yeah, this is terrible. We're at 35 FPS, and it's super slow. It's almost like taking a 60 FPS video and sampling it down to 25 FPS. I mean, that's how slow it's moving. This is completely unplayable. Let's see if enabling DLSS makes a difference. Okay, DLSS quality, let's see what that does. So we're in the 40s, but it still feels really slow. It doesn't feel smooth like it did previously in the 40s without ray tracing enabled. And honestly, I mean, other than the shadow detail like you can see coming from the building in the background there, I don't see much of a difference with ray tracing enabled. Maybe future scenes in the game or later in the game where there's more atmospheric effects, it makes a difference, but currently this is, I mean, doesn't seem worth it. But let's drop the DLSS down and see what else we get. Let's just go ahead and jump to ultra performance. Much smoother experience, but graphics quality takes quite the hit. And we're still not at 60 FPS, so yeah, it looks like we're going to have to try some frame generation and see what we get. So still at 1440p, but we have to change the super resolution type from DLSS to AMD FSR 3 in order to enable frame generation. I believe it's because the RTX 3060 Ti doesn't have Nvidia's version of frame generation that's exclusive to the 50 series. So AMD, however, allows you to enable their frame generation with basically any current graphics card, or 30 series, 40 series, even their own 70 or 7000 series, 6000 series. So I have FSR 3 set to native with frame generation on and ray tracing turned on at 1440p. Let's see what we get out of it. Immediately I can tell it's slower even in just the menu. Like, I can feel the latency from the frame generation. So what we were seeing at the 60 FPS, our base was likely 30 FPS. And even in the video here, it struggles. Oh yeah, this is terrible. Okay, so now that it's cleaned itself up, but yeah, I can tell that it's actually not 50 FPS. It's probably a base of 20, if that. So yeah, definitely not a playable experience. Let's see what different FSR settings get us. But I mean, at least the picture quality is actually phenomenal. It looks much better than what DLSS looked like. But yeah, let's see what we get. Okay, turning FSR 3 to... Let's go straight for balanced. And ray tracing is still turned on. Okay, see what happens. Well, it's actually a really clean picture quality. You see some of the causes of FSR 3 on like the motion from the sword and things like that, but overall the picture sharpness is much better than what I was getting from DLSS. But you could tell you're using FSR in the motion portions. But yeah, this says we're at 76 FPS. It's smooth looking, but you can tell it is frame generation from the input latency. Yeah, in a fast-paced game like this that requires really quick reaction time, I would not recommend using frame generation. To me, it's not playable like that. I mean, you can fake it if graphics is most important to you. Go for it. But in my experience or my preference, I would rather prefer less latency in a game that's fast-paced like this, and a good stable 60 FPS, even if that means we have to sacrifice some of the graphics. With that being said, I'm going to come back with my optimized settings for 1080p and 1440p. So here are my optimized settings for 1080p and 60 frames per second with an RTX 3060 Ti. Resolution at 1920 by 1080, VSync off, FPS limit to 60. This is going to get us a rock solid 60 FPS experience. Preset is custom, DLSS to quality, sharpness at 6. The default is 8, but it adds too many pixels, or pixelation, if you want to call it. Ray tracing off, filtering at 16, shadow quality at best, effects at best, global illumination at high, reflections at high, and foliage at high. Motion blur at best, and all of these post effects options turned on, except for monochrome filter. And as you can see with those settings, it's a clean, clear image, and we have a rock solid 60 FPS performance without sacrificing graphics quality. Now you could use FSR3. You'll still net the same performance. However, with FSR3, the picture does look smoother with less post-processing effects issues like pixelation and graininess. However, it's also a very softened image, so you lose some of the sharp details like the cloth and the armor, things like that. You lose some of the small details in that stuff because of the blurriness or the softening of the image with FSR3. But as you can tell, as I'm playing through this, I'm getting my butt handed to me because this game is really hard. Yeah, it's a perfect 60 FPS experience. So let's go ahead and now check out 1440p. Okay, and here are my optimized settings for 1440p. Resolution set to 2560 by 1440, full screen, VSync off, FPS limit to 60, custom preset, super resolution set to DLSS, DLSS quality, sharpness to 6, reflex low latency on, anisotropic filtering set to 16, shadow quality standard, effects high quality, global illumination standard, reflection standard, foliage high quality, motion blur high quality, and the rest of the post effects enabled. Now this will get you 1440p at 60 FPS, pretty rock solid. You'll see a dip here or there maybe to 59, but overall it is a 60 FPS experience. As you can tell, rock solid, and graphic quality is great. Definitely an enjoyable experience, and this is the way I would play. For whatever reason, when you come in and out of a cutscene, FPS always drops, but it comes right back as soon as you're back into playing the game. Alright guys, well, that's going to be it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please dislike the video and tell me what you didn't like about it. Otherwise, see you in the next one.